Hi everyone, it's Darren at SimNation. A couple of you have asked me to do a video on depth chart and formations. So I've done this before. I think I did it under game planning, but I'll talk a little bit about it today. This isn't going to be a long video because there's not a lot that I can talk about in this regard, but um, for those of you not familiar with my videos, this is around Draft Day Sports College Football 2023, which is a Wolverine Studios title. I highly recommend it if you like simulation-based football games. This is probably the premier game at this time. Um, there are other games in the genre like Bowl Bound College Football is a different one. Um, but I will say Wolverine Studios has done a pretty good job of keeping this game up to date and keeping it vibrant. There are probably a lot more people who play the single player than multiplayer, but if you want to play in an online league, I would highly recommend SNCFL, which is the league that this is about. Um, I'm going to use Texas Tech as an example because I think Texas Tech, I use a more simplified methodology around formations and depth chart. I'm going to start with formations. So formations is found under strategy, under formations. Now, you can use formations for a lot of different things. There are four different formations. There used to be five. A lot of people don't like the fact that they took the fifth one and made it offensive backups or defensive backups, depending on the whether it's offense or defense. Um, to me, I use formations as a way of rotating players in and out. And in some games where I'm playing a very good human coach, I will use formations to create matchups that I want to have throughout the game. Um, so at Texas Tech, we use a really simple one. I only really run an offense that has two formations, actual formations, not this formation. Where I run a spread offense and I run my offense out of the spread and two tight end. And I do that because I don't have a lot of talent at Texas Tech, and I've built the offensive recruiting around the spread into tight end. Now I could shift to a shotgun or shotgun four if I wanted to. Not going to do a two tight end jumbo. I just don't have the tight ends for it. And that kind of determines the playbooks that you use. I'll do a different video on that. That's a lot longer. But as you can see here is if you look at spread and you look at this, you notice that you have running, you have pass. Now I use formations at Texas Tech to create rotation amongst my player group to keep them fresh, as well as to move certain running backs in during certain periods that may assist me. So one of the game features I'd love to see is where I could actually change the formation by the half or by the amount of time left in, where I might want to have like a really good receiving running back in the final 2 minutes because I'm likely throwing the ball if I'm behind. That adds a lot of features, and candidly, it people in Bowbound love that. It's a feature in Bowbound, but it's also something that people hate. So I'm okay with the way they've got this. Maybe get back to fifth one that quiet some people, but some people want up to 10. Anyways, I use this for rotation. So what you'll see is 75-25. That means I want my starters to be on the field 75% of the time. I want my backups to be on the field 25% of the time. Now, when I do play against other opponents, will I am going to use this in a different way, such as I want to maybe say that I think that they're running the ball to the right 25% and they're running the ball to the left 75%. I could use this to actually say that I'm going to put my best run block or best run stopping line people on one side 25% of the time and the other side 75% of the time. So you can use it that way too. And of course, when you get to defense, you can see that you have really this is passing, this is running. So I don't do much here. I'm using it for rotation and I keep it pretty vanilla on defense. And again, I just don't have the personnel to be able to do this at Texas Tech. So what you'll notice is 75% of the time, uh, I have one package for the running, 25% the other, and then I use offensive package two for my pass plays. and 4 for my pass plays to create that rotation. People do this really differently. I would say be open to it. Now, what does that mean? So that's great and easy to see, right? But when I go to depth chart, what you see is right here is package. So this corresponds back to that screen you just saw. So default offense and offensive package 3 are run plays for me. Offensive package 2 and offensive package 4 are run plays for me. I'm sorry, pass plays. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying I'm going to set this package to be all the people who are really great at ensuring that I run the ball well. So for the most part, that's going to be wide receiver, tight end, and line. Now, one of the things I don't do that other coaches do, and I have mixed feelings on this. I've seen where it works. I've seen where it just doesn't. Is I don't rotate my line. I will rotate my defensive line, but I will not rotate my offensive line. And one of the reasons for doing that is just I don't know that there's value though, candidly. I think the value is in recruiting people who can play both ways, and maybe just worst case is if you're going up a game in a game where a guy is moving his best defensive line around and he's a problem for you. That's the only time I would ever say rotate your line and rotate your tackles or rotate your guards. But I don't do it. I know a lot of people do. I don't. Because I don't think there's enough value for me to spend the time in just changing that up. I'd rather spend my time on running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. Well, I think it does matter and it makes more sense to do it because those are traditionally positions coming on and off the field. Um, I will rotate my quarterback sometimes, depending on the team. In this case, Texas Tech doesn't have good quarterbacks. Hargrave is actually the best quarterback I have. But at like Washington State, I will actually, based on the run package, rotate in a running quarterback instead of Leo McCauley, who is my general all-purpose quarterback. 25% time I'll put a guy named Overby in who's just this phenomenal running quarterback, and I do that to create a change of pace and allow me to use option plays I can't use with McCauley. But anyways, if you look at this, how do I stack this? So wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 on sweeps, they're blocking. So I want to make sure that I have my best run blocking people in at those positions. And again, this is a run package. So Ochoa and Metz are my two best. So I want to make sure that they're in. You could put tight ends here, candidly, and that would work. And then on some plays like bubble screen, not bubble screens, but jet sweeps and other things, these guys are. Now, if I'm going to run the ball using some of the reverses and other things, I'm going to try to find the person that best meets that. So in this case, like if I was doing that and I don't, I would look at probably having Mets wherever I'm going to do the wide receiver reverses. Or I would have Gregory Shore wherever I'm going to do the wide receiver reverses because those two are likely the two that could run the ball with the most effect. Whereas Ochoa, not really a running person, right? He does have the strength for it, but Mets and Shore both are people who have the strength to be able to run the ball as well as the agility and the speed and the hands. So that's how I've lined this up. If you look at tight end, you notice also that what I've done is I've taken the best run blockers and I put them in Fernandez because I run to that direction. And if you want to see what I mean by that is when we look at a two tight end, I do a lot of runs to the left. I do runs to the right, so you're not going to be able to focus me on that. But what this creates is now I can see that when I go left, I've got my two best run blockers on the left. And then I'm sorry, my two best run blockers, that doesn't make sense. That should be a LTE, but um, yeah, that's messed up. But anyways, I have my two best run blockers on the left and I have my two next best on the right. So that's why I do that. And then our backups are generally the people who are the next in line to be the best at the position. If you were to rotate your line, you would just do the same thing. You'd look at this and say, okay, I want Robos on the side I'm going to run to. And again, the key here is the side I'm going to run to the most should have my best run blocker. the side I'm going to run to the next most should have my next best run blocker. So it just works out that Williamson and Robles are kind of my two best run blockers. And then if I were to look at pass blocker, they're kind of the same. Beasley's a better pass blocker, but I don't have him in. He's a backup. I would look at the same thing for guards, where I would say, okay, if I really wanted to switch them in and out, I would probably put Pratt on the right side, and then I would probably put Sherman on the left side, and just you'd keep doing that. Now, you'll notice that I do change. Line doesn't change, but I do change my wide receivers because now they're in different places. The reason for this is because now I'm throwing the ball, and now what I want to do is I want to put in my fastest guys in the positions where they'll have the most success. So people may ask why I put Metz at wide receiver 4. Well, if you look at the spread, you'll see why I do this. Um, that doesn't look like, anyways, we'll come back to that. But there's a spread where you have 4 wide receivers. Metz actually would line up in a position that he is able to. We'll do shotgun 4 because that's more illustrative. This play a lot of times gets a lot of attention from me because I am going to do a lot of RPO. And in RPO, I've talked about this before. Wide receiver 4 is a very, very important position in RPO because a lot of the longer passes go to wide receiver 4. But generally, the way I try to line this up is if you look at this, you'll notice that Tribble is one of my better overall wide receivers, so he gets wide receiver 1 because I want that to be a more possession type thing. I want a speedster at wide receiver 2 because, again, wide receiver 2 goes long on a lot of plays. So I need somebody who has speed. Slot wide receiver is traditionally going to be someone who has higher agility and good hands. So that's why Thurman is in that position. And then, of course, we just talked about why Metz is where Metz is. And you'd see this a lot more at Maryland, where there are times where I have my best wide receiver at wide receiver 4. Um, but again, that's where you might use the formation a little bit more to say, look, for shotgun 4, I'm going to make that default offense. For 2 tight end, I'm going to make that offensive package 2. For spread, I'm going to make that offensive tackle 3. And then for I formation and pro set, I'll make that offensive package 4. And then that allows you to better line up your people against those formations. And that's how a lot of people actually do use it. I just don't, because I don't like changing up my players on the field that often. I feel like if I have really good players and I've recruited well, I don't need to be pulling them on and off the field always based on a different formation. Um, but I've seen people do it. They've done it with success. It's just not something I do. Tight end, you'll notice the same thing here is I've now switched. It's not on tight end. So you'll notice here is Bonilla is a faster tight end. Kennedy is as well. So I've switched over to speed and hands over blocking skills. And then you've also noticed that I've switched out the running back. I brought in Peoples. The reason for that is he's faster, he's more agile. He's probably going to be better in a pass package than the normal starting running back, who is also Peoples. But you'll notice that here I have Keys, but there I have Keys as well. Again, those are my top 2, but here you'll notice Serrano is now the backup running back, mostly because, again, he's more tailored to the run than he is to the pass. So that's kind of how I use them. On the defense, again, what you would see here a lot of times, especially with some of my teams that have more depth than Texas Tech does, you'd notice default defense and defensive 3 are my run-based defenses, and defensive 2 and 4 are my pass-based, where you would actually see me change up my whole defensive line based on run or pass plays, and then my linebackers will move around as well. And traditionally what's happening is because I look at your game analysis for your past games, I would look at it and say, okay, you're running a lot to the right. So what I want to make sure of is that if I'm running a 4-3 defense, I have my best run guys on the left. If you're running a lot to the left, I want my best run guys on the right. And same for the linebackers, is I want to make sure the strong side linebacker is the right guy best for the run, and the weak side linebacker is the right guy best for the run if you're running to the right. And again, it's a flip, right? Um, and then you can do the same thing with things like nickel packages, because there are people who use nickel against the run. So in a run set, I would say that I want to have my best run defensive back or box safety or whatever you want to call that, a box defensive back on at this nickel back position. Um, but I don't do that here. But again, what I would do is I would look and say, okay, let's start with defensive end. I'm thinking about run instead of pass right here. So strength and tackling mean more than speed necessarily. So I'm going to line up my strongest people uh, at the key positions here. So again, if I think you're going right, my left end is going to be someone like Jolly. My right end is going to be Nuttall. I think that works out about right. Yeah, that does. And then I'll do the same for defensive tackle, where I would sit there and say that, okay, I'm going to look and see who's my strongest guy and who's got good tackling. So in this case, I would put Edwards Hill, and I would put BB there. So that's a way in which you can look at it. Pass packages, what I would say is, I know people do okay, this is my set for the 4-3, this is my set for the 3-4, this is my formation for the dime or nickel, or 4-2-5, and then they'll line that against packages and then set the depth chart there. So generally speaking, just a reminder, against the run, on defense, strength and agility mean more to the run and tackling than in the passing game, where speed, agility, and interceptions or hands mean more in that case. Now, if you're pass rushing, speed means more a lot of times in the pass rush, unless, of course, you look at the line and you notice you have a strength differential. And in that case, you want to prioritize strength higher than speed, because in those cases you can bull rush somebody. So that's it for now. Hopefully you find this useful, but formations can be used many different ways. They can be used to create rotation, so you keep your players healthy and keep them in the game longer. Or don't get in scenarios, because a lot of people do ask me, why did I lose the game in the third or fourth quarter? Well, you're not rotating your players and they get tired. The game does factor that in against endurance. And if you just leave them in every play, they get tired, and a team that's rotating like me is going to come back in the fourth quarter and beat you 90% of the time, because my team is not tired. It's not always the case, because if there's a huge talent differential, it doesn't matter. Or you can use the formations to say that I want to align it against specific real life formations. Well, I want my default offense to be the spread. I want my offensive package number one to be two tight end and two tight end jumbo. I want my offensive package 3 to be I formation and pro set. The reason for doing that, of course, is you only have two wide receivers, you have two backs, and you have a tight end. So you're aligning it because it makes sense to do that. And then I want my offensive package 4 to be my shotgun offense. So there are a lot of different ways you can use it, or you could use that for wishbone. But that's traditionally how people use it. They use it to rotate people in and out, or they use it against a specific formation, or they use it on defense to counteract a specific formation. Well, I want my best rushing players in on these plays because I feel like that person's going to run more often, 6 yards or less, versus 6 yards or more, they're going to throw the ball. So That's how I would use it, and that's what I recommend. If you like this video, let me know. If you want to have me talk about a specific topic, definitely let me know, and we'll go from there. So thank you for your time today. Have a great day and a good Mother's Day.